Hello, this is Sudhakar Maparthi. Today we're going to talk about instance hostname types, IP name, and then resource name. These are the two types. When you launch EC2 instance, you have to specify one of these hostname type. So why these are two different things? Because this is the default. This is the default IP name when you launch an instance, which uses IPv4 address, and whereas resource name, we can use it for IPv6, okay, host names. So let's say you have an EC2 instance and it is in a subnet, and then that subnet is of type IPv6. So this EC2 instance is in a subnet where IPv6 is configured. And so when a request comes, the DNS service, the DNS record will resolve it to this IP address, IPv6 address. This record type is a record. So if you see, you have an instance which is configured for IPv6 through this subnet. And then, so when the DNS record, DNS resolves it, it will be resolved to IPv6. Now let's take another example. This instance is connected to a subnet that is of type IPv4, and in this case, this will be resolved to this DNS record, will be resolved to the IPv4 type of record. So which ones to choose when you are launching an instance? Should I choose IP name or resource name? It all depends upon whether you're going to use IPv6 address blocks and IPv4 address blocks, or a combination of those. Depending upon that, you will choose. If you want to use only IPv4, you can just use IP name. In future, if you are going to use IPv6, then I would use resource name. So then I can enable, once I use a resource name, I can enable whether to resolve to a IPv4 or IPv6, depending upon the subnet block that is being configured. Now, what is this? What is the host name finally? So this is the mechanism. So if you use resource names, then it will use instance ID as part of the host name. So that's what it is. This is saying. If I use resource name, I'm going to use instance ID. Every instance has an ID. Every instance as an ID. And if I use IP name as my host name type, then I will use the IP address as part of my host name. So this is some extra information here. If it is East Coast, US East 1, the names will be EC2.internal at the end. And if any other region, we have to specify the region name also in it. So instance ID dot region dot compute dot internal. So that's the name of the resource name, name of the whole instance host name. So these names will be resolved through A records or AAA record to an IP address, either to IPv4 or IPv6. Okay, and then if you connect from an SSH client to an instance, and then if you issue a command called hostname, then you will get the corresponding name, this name, as your answer. All right, that's all I have for today. So let's recap. EC2 instance can be launched in IPv4 or IPv4 v6 dual stack or only IPv6 subnets. I can say resource name as my host name type if it is IPv6 or IPv6 or IPv6, IPv dual stack or IPv6. I will mention it as resource name. IPv4 only, so then I'll mention it as IP name, instance host type. If it is resource name, then I will have instance ID in my host name. If it is IP name, then I will have only IPv4 address in my host name. Okay, that's all. That's the main thing here. Host name type. Host name type, depending upon host name type, the host name will be decided, and that would be resolved through A records or through A records. Okay. All right. So what is this all? What page am I configuring in this c1c2 diagram? So this is the one that I am configuring. Amazon EC2. I'm going to clear this. Amazon EC2 instance host name types. So this is the page that I am configuring. IP name, resource name, an example how resource name, when to use, what type, how do you modify, all that. So there's a lot going on here, but hopefully, that diagram should help you to understand everything here. So a combination of these two. So you should be able to resolve a host name, how host names are formed, and how host names are resolved to IP addresses. Okay, that's all I have for today. Bye.